So remember to make this on the video. And all the news about our channel. Today I have my guest that is Assadullah Fareedzai, that is a friend from Afghanistan. He's actually in Norway. We met together in the International Summer School in Oslo in 2013. And I invited him to explain to all the public his experience about what is happening in Afghanistan. He was working with the Norwegian embassy. He was like political advisor. Now he's working for the United Nations mission in Afghanistan. Actually, is in Norway, and it will be important for me and for the public, international public, to show to you his personal experience about his country. So, Sadullah, I will give you the stand, and you can talk about it.
Well, thank you very much, my friend, for the invite, and I think it's nice talking to those who are still interested in Afghanistan. I'm going to be sort of brief, and I'm going to try to have to put light on this current, not only the current developments, but also I will go a little bit backward. That we are the international community did go wrong. What were the main mistakes actually? What happened before the complete withdrawal, and what happened before and last 20 years. So I will directly try to start it from this after the topple of the Taliban regime, which happened in 2001, and then there was a Bonn conference, that the Bonn International First Conference. I think, according to my point of view, and many Afghans, when I was interacting with them back in my country, with the politicians, with the religious scholars, with the tribal leaders, with the youth, they were sharing the same opinion. And that was that Bonn conference was not inclusive, but it was exclusive conference, which means that the then insurgent group, for example, like Hizb Islami, one of the main political party of Hikmatyar, and then the Taliban, they were not invited, and they should have been invited to that Bonn conference. But then that happened, and the international community again brought focus on people which have sort of to some degree of influence due to various reasons among their own ethnic groups. But generally, there are people who have done a great damage actually to the country and last 3-4 decades. But the power was we had an interim administration. There was an emergency Jarga. And again, like there was the first presidential and parliamentary election in which President Karzai was elected as a first president of Afghanistan. So again, the power was there was no sort of balance, in power sharing. That balance was missing. One ethnic group, or for that matter, one political party, was almost given the whole, security institutions, and also including the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which was actually not a sort of balance, and which was criticized then by various other ethnic groups and various political parties. But by the way, in last 20 years, that was the first mistake that shouldn't have happened in the Bonn conference. I think, and added to to prevent the Taliban for re-insurgent as a re-insurgent group or the Hizb Islami. I think they should have invited these both groups to the Bonn conference. The Bonn conference should have been much more inclusive rather than exclusive. Then we had elections. I think I was part of that election process, and that election was to some extent free, fair, and transparent, the 2004 and 2005 elections. But in 20 years, as an Afghan, what I saw, and this all 20 years was that we have actually made some gains. I would not say it will be unjust if I say, okay, if I focus all on negative points. There was some sort of also gains, achievements such as freedom of speech, free media. We had elected, so-called elected parliament, institutions, and many other, things. But again, like what I see, this democratic process, which election is core in the democracy, I think it was getting worse day by day. For example, I can give you the example of the 2009 elections and then 2010 elections, parliamentary elections, where seats were almost for sale. There was, too much corruption in the election process. There was too much foreign interferences, in the Afghan parliamentary and presidential elections, particularly presidential elections. And I don't want to elaborate further on that, but I think those who are focusing on Afghanistan, they have this bigger picture that who interfered in 2009 elections, and then who interfered in 2014 elections, and again in 2029. So all these elections were fraudulent. It was a sort of, the democracy was not looking genuine. It was a kind of, fraudulent, rigged election process. And that's why, people have really stopped believing actually in the election process. And you might have seen, particularly in 2014 and 2019 elections, that the turnout was dramatically decreased, and those both elections. But my personal point of view is that neither the 2014 elections nor the 2019 elections, and also the 2009 elections, those were not transparent. Those didn't represent the voices of the people or didn't reflect the, intention of the people. And that was a big problem. And that's why, people, they wouldn't believe the democracy there. That's why people, they wouldn't turn out for the election to participate in the election process because of these reasons that I have just showcased. Institutions have been built, in last 20 years. But I think the international community heavily invested, in individuals and warlords, and corrupt technocrats rather than institutions. We have a lot of up and downs, a lot of difficulties. Therefore, the democracy really didn't produce good results. Therefore, it didn't really work out in Afghanistan. The other part was, the resurgence of the Taliban as an insurgent group in 2003. Had they been, involved in the Bonn conference, they wouldn't have started insurgency against the government, against the then government, and they wouldn't have challenged, the security stability of Afghanistan. That mistake happened. Then, I think 2005 and 2006. At that time, that was the best chance, for the peace process. But To be honest and to come up with a very frank assessment, I think neither parties later on had the intention, towards a genuine peace and reconciliation process. Neither former President Karzai, nor President Ghani, nor the international community, and the warlords and all these other high-ranking government officials. President Karzai, he was like he at that time, as I said, in 2004 and 2005, the Taliban, they really had an intention because they were weak. They really would like to join the peace process. But that time, President Karzai was completely against the process. I mean, in public, he was supportive to the process, but he was sort of playing politics in order to survive. He has its own tactics. He has its own, way of how to play politics. That's why, like I can give you one example of the High Peace Council, which was established in 2009 or 10. So the main purpose of the High Peace Council establishment was to support, the whole Afghan peace process. But that really didn't happen. They have spent a lot of money, millions, the donor community money was spent there, but it didn't produce any result. And late Robani, in order to just make him please, the President Karzai, he established or created this body, and President Robani was selected as a chairman of the High Peace Council. So to summarize this, the peace process didn't work because neither parties, as I mentioned, had the intention to bring lasting peace, to Afghanistan. And there are many reasons behind those. Could be, regional interferences, could be neighboring countries interfering, and many other issues that need another detailed discussion. So during this tenure, when President Ghani, became the president, elected as a president in 2009 elections, 2019 elections, sorry. So then this peace process got a bit momentum. But again, like the Americans have started a unilateral approach towards Taliban, which led us, led us to Doha Agreement that was signed between the United States and between the Taliban. And actually, that Doha Agreement was a big mistake by the international community, particularly the Americans, because it was signed by the Americans. It was a bilateral agreement between the Americans and between the Taliban, and it was a sort of exclusive agreement because they did not involve, the government of Afghanistan as a party of this agreement, which really also decreased the government morale, which decreased the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces morale, and which actually, created a lot of mess. And then later on, the Americans, and, as there was one question, Americans and Taliban, they were blaming each other. This blame game started that they are not respecting the Doha Agreement, and they are, both of the parties are violating, the agreement, and everyone had their own reasons that I will explain later on. So the Doha Agreement, when happened, so that was actually the starting point of the collapse and demoralizing of the collapse and weakening of the republic. So then this again, like irresponsible withdrawal happened by the American forces and their allied forces, or you can say NATO, which led us to this messy situation. And I think this was a huge mistake that happened. And that also happened, when the Americans, or the international community abandoned us back in 1990s when we defeated the Russians, and they should have stayed. They didn't. They made that mistake. If you have seen this documentary of Charlie Wilson, you can it explain that scenario very well. But that was a huge mistake, and that led us to this 9/11, attacks. The AQ Al Qaeda camp, they were harbored, many other terrorist group camps. They organized, planned attacks on the and challenged the national security of the European countries and in the United States. And then it again led the Americans, to sort of invade Afghanistan. But this is again, they did this withdrawal. We call it very irresponsible withdrawal. Afghan, we said that was a betrayal of Afghans. That's the betrayal of the sacrifices that the Americans, NATO, and other forces have made in Afghanistan. So, like 20 years is a lot of time. And 20 years, we have made achievements, as I said, and those dreams, those achievements have been washed away by this drawdown of the American and NATO forces. And then we had this 15 August after this thing, that when Taliban took over Kabul, and you have seen this whole evacuation process. You have seen all the messy situation. I think the world have seen all the messy situation, and almost like it's 1 year. In the period of 1 year, I think I will just briefly put some light on the current distressing developments that is happening right now. So what happened in 1 year? What did the Taliban achieve? How people become more vulnerable, and all that. I think in 1 year of a time, if we see, we are Afghans, I would say, because I'm abroad. We have a country. Afghans are living in a country which doesn't have a constitution. This country is run without a constitution. Only on one single small issue, which is the girls' education. They haven't yet taken a decision on this. And this is, the Afghan, this is the natural and legitimate and a human right of all girls to go to schools, to gain education, but so far they haven't. And it is really distressing development, actually. And then we see a lot of more problems, because like they haven't made any progress in governance, service delivery, development. They're not respecting the human rights, freedom of speech, like media is censored, what we are hearing, and then many other issues, your internal differences. So this is a big problem, and when it comes to decision-making process, I would not say that all of the Taliban are actually or in agreement with such policies, such as banning the girls' education, or banning the freedom of speech, or all Taliban are not against about the inclusive government, which the international community are pressing for, or which the Afghans are insisting on, elections and all that. These are actually I have several times mentioned to a number of a number of the conferences and sittings that we call it an establishment, with the Taliban. Within the Taliban, there is one circle, and they are the hardliners. There are 15 to 16 or 18 people could be. For example, this chief of justice, or for example, the Minister of Education, or for example, one sheikh who was recently assassinated, Sheikh Nurullah, and Sheikh Abdullah Amir al-Mu'mineen himself, and many others. So they are hardliners. They are against all the democratic values that the international community, and particularly the Afghans, are asking for, such as holding elections, girls' education, freedom of speech, human rights, women rights, and many other things. So still the decision making center is Kandahar. They are taking decision, and then either if the people in Kabul, other ministers or cabinet members are in favor or against, they cannot do anything. So this is the whole actually the problem. So there is, I mean, like in terms of governance, a huge failure. The distance between the people and the current government, de facto government, is increasing day by day. They don't have constitution. It's almost 1 year. They have an interim cabinet so far. They haven't. There's no parliament. There's no elections. The poverty is increasing day by day. Jobs, the people are becoming more and more vulnerable. And there is no service delivery, and a lot of people, they are actually, when we are talking to them or other people, they are complaining a lot. So then the other headache for the Taliban is these days is the ISKP, this Daesh. I think what we see, their strength is increasing day by day. They have targeted some Shia mosques, and Shia community across the country. They have claimed, many of the attacks in which they have killed the key Taliban leaders, key Taliban commanders, and people, I mean, people, key members of the Shia community. So then another, headache for the Taliban is now, which is turning into headache actually, and I think Taliban are now taking them a little bit serious. This is the so-called National Resistance Front, which is really not national, but they call it national because it lacks this national, how they portray it. And then there is internal differences between the Taliban. So all these issues are making Taliban more and more vulnerable. And I think if they go with such, behavior, or if they do not change their approach and behavior, I think they will face more and more problems, and it will lead, to the collapse of the Taliban regime. And then, like, that's the what happened. I mean, these are all sort of distressing development that I explained it, but the more important point is, like, this humanitarian situation on the ground. I think that is something that the international community should really focus on. Recently, we had an earthquake in southeast of the country, Paktika and Khost. So a lot of casualties, unfortunately, and the government was not able, to really reach out and cooperate or help the affected people. But still, some NGOs, maybe individuals, some charity foundations, they, together with the government, somehow they help those people. There is flash floods across the country. A lot of casualties are happening there. The government is not in the position, to sort of help out the people. They are still vulnerable. They are facing a lot of economic problems. The government itself. I don't think that they are even in the position to pay the salaries of all their soldiers. So the institutions are, getting weaker and weaker day by day. What I'm hearing. So these are actually the problems, and then we are having this upcoming winter, which is going to be a huge catastrophe, I think, because last winter the people have some reserves at least with themselves, and they spend it. But still, we had a lot of casualties and issues, last year in 2021. But I mean, this year, I think if the international community, particularly humanitarian organization, didn't reach to the vulnerable people, so it's going to be a sort of huge catastrophe in Afghanistan. And then the last point was which is interconnected with this this development and stuff was that 20 years we had the international community in Afghanistan. They have spent trillion. They have made sacrifices both with the blood and treasure. That's why sometimes I feel sort of very dissatisfied and angry that if you come to any country, if you start building it, if you made sacrifices both with the blood and treasure, and then you are leaving them, at once, without to the mercy of, people or groups, who even don't know how to rule the country. So it's unjust, and still, I mean, maybe and the Western capitals, people, including the U.S. people, are still, I think, supporting that decision, this NATO withdrawal decision, that it was a timely decision. Because if we didn't withdraw from Afghanistan, some would justify like that, how can we put all our intelligence resources and blah 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 in Ukraine, for example, because it's an immediate national security threat and this and that. I think this is these kind of justifications kind of doesn't make any sense, and I think they shouldn't have withdrawal. They should have genuinely supported this peace process, putting pressure on both the government and the Taliban, if not directly through the countries that have influence over the Taliban. But it didn't happen. And that withdrawal is happened. And because of that withdrawal, now we have this situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sadullah. I collected a little bit of questions for you. So, your speech was great because you were very synthetic, but with a lot of information for the Western public that normally at the moment have very few news about Afghanistan. So, I'm talking about Western public, but a lot of people it's not from the West in the viewers. So for the international viewers, so let's start from the first question that I collected before the stream. So it was one of our viewers, Blaine Catledge. Which part of the agreement between the US and the Taliban have been broken, and why does each side claim to have broken them?
I think I have gone through the agreement, when I was in Kabul. So after the agreement, this blame game started between the Taliban and the US. And what I remember, the Taliban would blame the United States for this drone attacks and air bombardment, which inflicted heavy casualties on the Taliban. And that was one of the tools, which made the Taliban really weaken, which have stopped the Taliban to enter capitals, district capitals, and provincial capitals, and which really helped our ANDSF, and on the battlefield. So that was the Taliban point, and then the Americans, they were blaming the Taliban for still, having connections with the Al Qaeda and other international terrorist groups and harboring them. And Taliban actually, time to time, they didn't subscribe to this blame and this accusation. They denied it many times. But just now, last week, 2 weeks back, when Zawahiri was killed, in the heart of the Taliban, in the one of the neighborhood, which was in the diplomatic enclave in Kabul, a really comfortable zone. So it shows that there is still connection between the Taliban and the Al Qaeda. So these were the main two sort of, blame game. And also in the beginning, it was this prisoners release, because the government was not ready to release prisoners. And the government reason was that if we release them, they will go back to the battlefield, and that happened. There were there were many cases, that was tracked both by the international community and by the government. That number of the released prisoners, they rejoined the battlefield, the Taliban, and start fighting against the government forces. That was, but later on, the government, due to huge pressure by the Americans, they released those prisoners. Yeah, these are what I still remember.
Yeah. So two questions that are connected. One of our, let's say, aficionados follower, me and B, what countries have influence on the Taliban? I will tell you like another one that is connected with this one about the influence. So let me show this one. Okay. It was like the same question about the influence that could have after the US went away from Afghanistan, of the foreign countries like China, Iran, and Russian Federation with the new government of Taliban's.
Like in Afghanistan, this is something very historical, that all these political parties, in Afghanistan, if it is Jamiat or if it is Hizb Islami or many others, including the Taliban, in one way or another, there was influence by foreign countries, such as Iran, Pakistan, Russia, China could be, India, a number of other countries, including Central Asian countries such as Uzbekistan, who had a direct influence in one of the key political leaders, for example, Marshal Dostum. So when it comes to Taliban, there used to be a very direct influence of Pakistan on the Taliban before the withdrawal, when the Taliban didn't take over Kabul. Because Taliban, they have their houses there, they have their families, they were getting support, not financial, but mostly military support. They were getting training, they had sanctuaries in Pakistan. So they were actually, the Pakistanis needed them and they needed the Pakistanis. So it was a both way sort of, I would say, influence. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the Pakistanis have had 100% influence over the Taliban. Maybe to some extent we can say 50 to 60%. One thing that I observed, I think during this 20 years, despite, sanctuaries and many other issues that they had in Pakistan, and despite, that Pakistanis have a direct influence over the Taliban, they were independent. They were taking some sort of independent decisions, in certain cases. They wouldn't care about X, Y, or Z. So, but I think that influence has been decreased now because all Taliban are inside Afghanistan. They don't listen much to the Pakistanis, but still this influence is there. Like one of the strategic core of the Pakistanis is the Haqqani network. They have a very good relationship with the Haqqani network, and that's why the Haqqani was mediating between the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and Pakistani government, because the TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban in Pakistan, is a big insurgent group which is creating a lot of instability, attacking the Pakistani army, and it's a big insurgent group, inside Pakistan, and they have sanctuaries inside Afghanistan. But they supported the Afghan Taliban during this, they call it, during this 20 years, what they call it, jihad against the Americans. So Haqqani was mediating. So Haqqani has a very strong relationship with the Pakistanis and maybe some other certain Taliban leaders also. But in general, I don't think so that Pakistanis have, that big influence over the Taliban as they used to have. And then we have Iran, yes, before takeover of the Taliban, Iran had some sort of influence over Taliban. Those Taliban who were located, in borders like south and southwest, which share border with the Iranians, because they were providing weaponry, they were providing cash, and the main reason for Iran and Russia, for that matter, was to hit hard the Americans, to compel Americans in NATO for withdrawal. So there was one of the main reasons behind Iran and Russia for supporting the Taliban was, to kill more Americans. That was the main reason. And after the U.S. withdrawal, I don't think so that the Iranians are supporting them. Although they have a sort of bilateral relationship, they have their embassy, the Russians have their embassy, but when it comes to influence, I don't think that they have that much influence over there.
Just to add with another question that is like compatible with the same issue, Ramrod, what is the country that Afghanistan will most trust to turn help develop their many resources?
Yeah, I mean, look, when it comes to trust, I think in politics, one man thing is that nobody trusts each other.
Okay.
Even I mean in EU here, many people, which is sort of one European Union, but still there are countries that don't trust each other. But when it comes to natural resources, I think for Afghans, we need a country which should be neutral, which should not have a sort of geopolitical interest or strategic interest in Afghanistan. There might be many countries which is not in this region. For example, if we say Chinese, I don't think so that many Afghans will support the Chinese. Because everyone knows what they did in Africa, everyone knows what they did in Sri Lanka. And also in this last 20 years, the Chinese development aid was close to zero. So a big economic power who is sharing a border with us, in 20 years, they did not provide much funding, for the development of Afghanistan. For example, Norway is a small country, but if you compare Norway with China, the Norway contribution was much, much bigger than the Chinese. So I don't think it will be China, it will be Russia, Pakistan. To some extent, India, people to people, there is a good relationship. Government to government was a good relationship. But then again, like some of the certain politicians who are sort of affiliated or close to Pakistanis or those anti-Indian government, they might come up with these apprehensions that, okay, if they come, in the meantime, they will be busy in the development, but in the meantime, they will promote insurgency and will threaten the national security of Pakistan. So these are controversial countries actually in this region. I think, we could be out of this region. There are many countries.
Another one about energy. Didn't know about this one, but have you got any information about Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India TAPI pipeline, also known as Afghanistan pipeline? Because I read something about it, but it's written that the Afghanistan pipe is not in finished or in construction and still.
Yeah, I think what the latest I heard that I think in coming months they will again start working on this topic. This topic project is very important for all these four countries, particularly Pakistan and India, because they need energy, especially India. But I think it's good even for Afghanistan. It's a good thing. I hope they started it, and I hope it will implement it. But my personal view and my assessment is that there will be much more hurdles, in front of this project as well. And I don't think that it will be completed in a very timely manner.
Another one that is more connected to your field. Does the travel ban of certain Afghanistan government officials seriously impede the foreign relationship with other countries?
Uh, the current Afghan government, you mean the Taliban government, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the what I'm following is this: the United Nations, the UN Security Council will decide today about the ban on the travel ban on the Taliban members. According to my interactions with some of the UN officials who are aware of the situation and who have sort of good information and kind of perception, they say that they don't think that the UN Security Council will ban all the Taliban. Put all ban on all travel ban on all the Taliban members. But I think it's going to be a good tool when it comes to putting pressure on the Taliban. This travel ban, economic pressure. But again, the more economic pressure you put on the Taliban, the more people will, will survive, will suffer.
This one that it's more about 1 year ago. I have the last 3-4 questions, like to stay under the hour. So, why couldn't the Afghan forces better resist the Taliban despite all the US training and assistance?
I think it's a very good question. First of all, the problem was not about the Afghan National and Defense Security Forces. I mean, the soldiers who were fighting in the battlefield. They were brave soldiers. Many of them have made sacrifices. They were martyred, defending the country, defending the people, protecting the people, defending borders. They were well trained. But the main problem was, in the leadership, actually, the corruption. The corruption was huge within the leadership of security sector. And it's not like, this corruption is happening since long back during the Karzai time. This was institutionalized during the former president, Karzai government. And the ministers were involved, deputy ministers were involved, commanders, big commanders were involved. So there were many ghost soldiers, the soldiers were not present, in the, for example, in the military corps, but the salaries were given to the personal pockets of certain individuals I mentioned. So this corruption was a big problem. Everyone was pocketing their own pockets, and that is why it really decreased the morale of the Afghan National Defense Security Forces, the soldiers, because there are many examples. For example, when the like in last many years when the Taliban surrounded, for example, the Afghan security forces, but there was no reinforcement forces, timely reinforcement forces sent to those, or for example, food, or they were lacking many stuff, so those were the main reasons that they couldn't resist. And after, as I said, after this the Doha agreement, that really contributed in decreasing the morale of the Afghan National Defense Security Forces. Really, really.
So, because like with the agreement, it was clear that the US were withdrawing. So, one from another, like super aficionados. Is there any force within Afghanistan itself that has any hope of stabilizing the country within the coming years? If not the Taliban, then somebody else, perhaps, as long as it's a native power. I think I think that the question is about the internal politics.
Yeah. Look, Taliban, they're also Afghans. So now Taliban is a reality. If we accept it or not, it is a reality. They have taken over the Kabul capital. They have control over the whole country. And, they have also some support at grassroots level. And I think the international community, for the time being, should continue working with the Taliban, particularly on the humanitarian issues and other issues. When it comes to political process, it is very important, for the international community, the UN, to put diplomatic pressure on the Taliban in order to sort of convince them for forming an inclusive government, paving the ground for elections, and involving other political forces, to join the government. Then the international community, if these things happened, I think international community should stop these small projects, because we are still ad dependent. We should get rid of this ad dependency. In last 20 years, one thing which was missing, as I said, trillion were spent, but there was no accountability. There was a lot of corruption in the donor community, also in the government, and we did not see one single project that could have generated jobs. And what people wanted projects, infrastructure, that would have generated jobs and eliminate poverty, because people are still very vulnerable when it comes to jobs, when it comes to poverty and many other issues. So if, for example, if there would be an inclusive setup, including other political forces, the Taliban, elections, if a certain degree of stability comes, I think after that the donor community should focus on the long-term development projects, infrastructure, or the government can take loan, from the IMF or from other countries, to build infrastructure. We have a lot of resources, gas, oil. We have lithium and many other things that should be extracted in a transparent way. So it will contribute in our economy. Yeah.
So another one, when I will put the last question, if I will receive, if there is any way to get Afghanistan's assets that were frozen, stolen by the US, returned?
I think the US were, I think, working on a sort of mechanism, and these are the money that belong to the Afghan people. I think freezing of this amount is directly affecting the Afghans, the people, and it is increasing the vulnerability among the people. So it depends. I mean, the United Nations should sort of seriously discuss this with the Americans and other countries to release these frozen assets. Yeah.
So this, and then if I will receive the last one from the public, or I will give you my last, but I already collected before. Is there is any chance that the National Resistance Front of Afghanistan, that is like it's like the son of Massoud Panjshir group, will be a political party that could be included in the new Afghanistan political course?
I think the son of Massoud, he's a young guy, and then this, as I said, it is really not national. When you say national front, so it should really be national. They should have reached out to all provinces, if not all, to many provinces. They should have people from all ethnic group. So this actually this national resistance front is mainly sort of consists of 2 or 3 provinces in the north.
Only Panjshir Valley.
Or Panjshir Valley, and maybe some people from Badakhshan and Androbs and all that, and some from maybe Kapisa. But I think they are not in the position to challenge the current regime. I think if we compare the National Resistance Front and ISKP is much stronger than the National Front. They are creating much more headache for the Taliban compared to the National Front, because they are, according to my information, like, even I was told by someone that they have two offices in Tajikistan. One is, they don't have, it's not well organized. There is internal differences, and there was a lot of pull and push between the son of Masood and others to become the chairman of this national front. But I think recently, just 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago actually, there was a big sitting, among the political leaders like Ustaz Sayaf, Muhakkik and Dostam and many others. And they have come up with a sort of declaration. So if those forces join this national front, I think it will give some sort of weight to this national front. Otherwise, only the son of Masood, he cannot do anything.
So it's very local. So last question, and like hoping that the new Afghanistan will be better as soon as possible, with maybe some good part that could be helping the people and not like only political parts. So, in your opinion, if there is any heritage of these years, because if we look to the map of the time, let's call like this, about the Afghan people. Like, for example, we are both from 1992, and you lived 10 years, let's say, of Afghan war, Soviet war, and 20 years of US Afghan war. There is like any heritage that could be bad or good, that at least made by the Soviets and the Americans, or it's only losing years in the history of Afghan people.
I think we shouldn't only blame the international actors or the international forces. The regional countries and other foreign countries. We Afghan should also share the blame, particularly the political class. They have done a great damage to this country back in last 4 decades actually, and maybe before that. These two withdrawal that happened, one was the Soviet withdrawal back then, and then there was NATO withdrawal. I think people, they still prefer NATO and Western countries compared to compared to Russia, because we know the capacity of the Westerners, the NATO countries, or European Union and US, regarding building Afghanistan. They have the capacity to support us, to help us, to cooperate us, which the Russia, they don't. And I think that's why, in both, as I reflected in the very beginning, towards, that's why, the first abandonment in 1990, when the US abandoned us, that was a huge mistake. That led us, to chaotic situation, civil war, harboring of the Al-Qaeda, and then the Taliban, and then finally we witnessed this 9/11 and other attacks. So then this one, the 2021 withdrawal, it was also a very irresponsible and withdrawal, and as I said, they betrayed Afghans because they invested heavily here. They shouldn't have left us in limbo. They shouldn't have left us, when they spent trillion, when they made sacrifices with blood and treasure, but they left us. And one thing that, as I said, that, okay, neither parties, they had the intentions, neither the government nor the Taliban, towards peace. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there was no way. if there is a will, there is a way. It's a saying in English. So if there was intention, it would have been a different situation now. So yeah, these irresponsible withdrawals shouldn't have happened.
So perfect. I think that your speech was amazing. Also, the questions and answer panel. Thank you for your time that you dedicated to our group. If anybody that will watch this video after want to make any question to Assadullah, I will send to him. So I hope that we will have him in Italy also for the geopolitical school in April. So I will let you know. And I wish a better future for the all Afghani people in the next years because they deserve it. And so, still thank you for your time. Wait a bit till I will close the live. And thank to all the viewers. I remember to you to put the like to the video, subscribe to the channel, and make on the notification so you will be updated for the next speech. We will prepare 2 free speech, maybe also 4 speech for weeks in the next weeks. So be prepared for the next speakers. Have a good night and see you soon. Ciao.
Thank you very much.